in France, who is with us today, has been appointed our permanent representative to UNESCO. It was in 2006 that we were honored to host Mr. Koichiro Masuo, Director General of UNESCO, at the launch of the Youth Path that took place at Brimstone Hill Fortress, our UNESCO World Heritage Site. Mr. Chairman, we need at this level to come to terms with the policies that could assist mankind to address this self-inflicted wound called climate change. We must find ethical ways of reducing its challenging effects on sustainable development. The floods and tsunamis, droughts, cyclones, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, famine, disease, and death are taking their toll. It is said that there are more environmental refugees now than there are war refugees. The reality is that it is not beyond the wit of man to find a solution to this problem, to reverse the trend that puts our people's and nations' health and safety and security, stability and prosperity on the road to catastrophe. It may be quite useful to convince ourselves that we did not inherit this earth from our ancestors. Rather, we have borrowed it from our children. We owe it to them to preserve it and to pass it on, enhance and improve. Your challenge, ladies and gentlemen, and that of your global allies, is to tame the beast. To tame the beast of rising sea levels, the beast of destructive storms and floods, to tame the beast of drought and famine and refugee flows and instability. We can do this best by resolving to cut, to reduce, to modify that which makes the beast strong, a fossil fuel-dependent global economy. And this brings us to the challenge of convincing those whose wealth and power has long been linked to fossil fuels that there is another way. This is why UNESCO's establishment of the World Commission on the Ethics of Scientific Knowledge and Technology in 1998 was such a watershed event, because it affirmed the importance of decision makers the world over having at their disposal decision-making criteria that would extend beyond purely economic considerations to the all-important ethical principles, the main focus of this meeting. The question is not whether economic considerations should carry greater weight than environmental and climatic ones, but whether the indifference towards the climatic and environmental consequences of various forms of human activity could in time cause the end of all human activity. We are all aware that it was not possible to hold an expert meeting or a governmental consultation in the Caribbean when the ethical dimensions of climate change were being studied between March and June of last year. This is, to a large extent, why we are meeting today. It is therefore of utmost importance that these deliberations produce the highest possible level of discussion, quality of analysis, and depth of insight, cognizant of the inherent challenges in highlighting the ethical dimensions of this issue. The United States are an important and powerful ally. Happens to be one of the world's highest fossil fuel emissions emitters. It accounts for 6% of the world's population and 22% of the world's emissions. We are all familiar with these statistics, of course, but I mention them because the dividing lines and the debates in that country over the issue of climate change in many ways reflect the dividing lines internationally. National economic advancement versus planetary survival. It is important to note that the US House of Senate has recently legislated climate control in an effort to fight global warming and to harness the power of clean, renewable energy. As the world's leading producer, What happens there in terms of climate change policy could have a major impact on what happens not only in our region, but indeed throughout the rest of the world. Indeed, it has a direct bearing on what we are here trying to do. The Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis has sought to address some of our concerns through the draft St. Kitts and Nevis Sustainable Energy Plan and the draft energy strategy for the sustainable development of St. Kitts and Nevis. Action has already been taken through the use of wind farm technology in Nevis and a similar advancing wind farm project on St. Kitts. Geothermal energy is on stream in Nevis. This project holds much promise for the Federation and has the potential to benefit our neighboring islands in the future. In fact, I understand from the experts that there's also some potential for geothermal development in St. Kitts as well, but that is for the future. Rising sea levels, horrendous hurricanes, and all of the other manifestations of climate change are not abstractions for the Caribbean. Indeed, they should not be abstractions anywhere in the world, but due to our size, manpower, and resource constraints, these repercussions are particularly harsh and immediate here. The effectiveness of the ethical case that this region presents then begins with you. As decision makers, we will be relying heavily on the analysis and vision that emerges from the deliberations in which you will engage today and tomorrow. The ethical case, our case, must be heard more clearly. The major polluters effectively and repeatedly explain why it would be difficult for them to stop. They've always done that. They step on you and ask you to move your feet. And incredibly, in our discussions of this issue, we often focus on and repeat the reasons the polluters give as to why it would be difficult for them to change the status quo. This does not serve us well, and that is why we are here today. Ladies and gentlemen, no one will or can represent us as well as we can and must. We have to begin to speak for ourselves. Let us move forward fully equipped to articulate the human and ethical dimensions of this matter. Because whether we think in terms of universal suffrage in the Caribbean, women's right to vote overseas, the civil rights movement in the United States, or the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa, it was, and in the final analysis, the ethical dimensions of those phenomenal battles that won the day. And it is the ethical dimensions of climate change debate which, through your efforts and the efforts of your allies worldwide, must be brought front stage. In conclusion, I know that's sometimes something people love to hear. Something that's the most, people just come to life when you say in conclusion. People who are not listening all day, they say in conclusion. They're waiting for that. So in conclusion, you are key to the proper positioning of the Caribbean on this most transcendent of issues. I'm confident that you would make the right choice and lay the foundation and building blocks for a multilaterally agreed climate change regime that is fair, inclusive, and effective. The lives of billions of people depend on your success. History will record our deliberations, and future generations will judge us. We will not be forgiven by our children and grandchildren if we fail. Every good wish for a most successful meeting. God bless you. God bless and preserve our peoples and our lands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. Now we will call on Mr. Antonio Maynard, Secretary General of St. Kitts and Nevis National Commission for UNESCO, for the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And in conclusion, thanks to everybody. A pleasant good morning to everyone once again. At this point, I am indeed pleased to present a brief word of gratitude to some very important officials and organizations who have played a key role thus far, not only for their participation at this impressive opening ceremony, but their involvement in the organization of this meeting. Mr. Chairman, please allow me to adopt the very appropriate and extensive protocol that was already established. On behalf of the St. Kitts and Nevis National Commission for UNESCO and the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, it is my humble duty to express sincere appreciation to the distinguished high officials and esteemed excellencies who have spoken so well this morning at this auspicious opening ceremony. The speakers have indeed enlightened and sensitized us to the impact of the phenomenon of climate change, and especially as it relates to ethical principles, which continues to impact on the economies, communities, and people of small islands, developing states. They have identified specific ethical challenges in the areas of science, mitigation, and adaptation as a basis for putting in place and setting the agenda for the ensuing debates to take place over the next 2 days. Hopefully, as a result of the outcome of this conference, we can collectively identify and implement the appropriate national and local policy actions that can be then developed and rolled out across the region, including the Caribbean, and at the global level with UNESCO expertise and support. Thanks to the Honorable Sam Conda, Deputy Prime Minister, for delivering that thought-provoking keynote address. And let me say here that Honorable Sam Conda must be commended for laying a very solid foundation for the UNESCO activities here in this country over the past 7 years. Thanks to the Honorable Nigel Carty, of course, Minister for UNESCO Affairs now, for his inspiring welcome remarks and his support in general, especially in hosting this particular conference. President of the UNESCO General Conference for delivering such poignant remarks. So, UNESCO Assistant Director General of the Social and Human Sciences for her captivating delivery. Dr. Nathan Noreen for chairing the opening ceremony, and also ably, and also for his chairmanship for the implementation committee. Dr. Noreen has put in a whole lot of work, especially with respect to the research of this particular conference. Thanks to the regional director from the Frederick Ebert Foundation for his kind remarks. Thanks also to Stephen Smith for that thought-provoking and creative poetry. Thanks to Reverend Gums and Larry Vaughan as well for taking part in the opening ceremony. In addition, over the past couple of months, we have collaborated with a number of international, regional, and Caribbean organizations in putting this meeting together. Thanks to the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and the various government departments and ministries, UNESCO international sectors and its headquarters in particular, UNESCO Kingston office for the Caribbean, the Frederick Ebert Foundation for funding at least 7 overseas participants to this meeting, the local steering committee for their hard work in organizing and implementing this particular meeting, His Excellency the Governor General for agreeing to host the welcome reception this evening. And we're hoping to see most of you here tonight. Not all. I hope all. Special thanks also are extended to the local sponsors who have made some significant financial contribution. And I believe this is a perfect example of public sector cooperation. We have raised some $40-something thousand from the private sector to host this particular conference. Thanks to Windsor University, Petro-Carib, Kittitian Hill, CMC Superfood Supermarket.